It is now time for our third topic of the evening. It's one that gets a bit of attention, the issue of blanket rezoning. Now, the bylaw passed by the last mayor and council to increase the housing stock in established communities has become a lightning rod. Our question for this round, I'll say it has some layers. What impact has blanket rezoning had on our city? And do you support keeping the policy, repealing it, or replacing it with something else? Sonia Sharp, you were up first on this. You have a minute.
Okay, well, I'll say right now that blanket rezoning is not making houses affordable. It actually caused a wedge in all the communities. I have committed to repealing blanket rezoning, reinstating what was there, and looking to cut the planning process where it needs to be cut. People's voices need to come back to council. I will say one thing that blanket rezoning has done. It's torn down larger homes and that suit big families that come here to live in Calgary. It also tears down big houses that some of our students are living in. They can't afford the new builds that are happening in those locations. Many newcomers and multi-generational families need these homes. The other thing, the push for blanket rezoning was more ideological than practical. I've tried to stop blanket rezoning in 2023 before it was a thing. And I was actually vilified by a member of council that I work with to the point where it didn't even pass a committee. And I'll give credit. There are some people up here that came to speak for it. But those that didn't, where were you? I was there saying no. Brian was there saying yes at the time, and Joe T supported it. But the other two, you didn't show up once for those 4 weeks.
Jeremy Farcas, you're next. Your time begins now.
Blanket rezoning speaks to the broken trust between members of council and the community. One of the deepest issues was that this whole saga has reflected a mayor and city council unable or unwilling to listen to the experience of Calgarians. And moves like, say, Sonia Sharp and Community First to backtrack on their commitments to repeal, to go back to maybe an optional process, only further erodes the confidence and the trust that Calgarians have. But we need to recenter ourselves. This is not about repealing blanket rezoning. I'm absolutely committed to doing so, but we need to continue to build the housing that Calgarians need. Right now, we are in a housing affordability crisis. If not blanket rezoning, we need to move forward on a transit-oriented development plan. We need to focus on the development occurring where the services and infrastructure can support it. So these two extremes of build everything everywhere versus build nothing anywhere, these aren't serving Calgarians well. We need to move forward on a plan to build housing, and that's what I'm running on.
Jeff Davison, you're our next speaker. A minute again on what impact has blanket rezoning had on our city, and do you support keeping the policy, repealing it, or replacing it with something else?
Well, I'm the only one up here who hasn't wavered. We will roll back the blanket rezoning. This simply does not work for Calgarians, and when the majority of Calgarians come out and voice their concerns on a project, and simply to have this city council, Sonia Sharp, the mayor, simply say we know better, it's got to go. Right? The last thing I want to see is our neighbors fighting over parking in communities. And discretion has told us now that some of these units have 0.5 parking. I don't know anyone who owns half of a car, but parking is a big concern in our city and needs to be addressed differently. But I'll tell you, the greatest thing about Calgary is the diversity of our communities. I don't want all these communities to look the same. I want to be able to have a different experience downtown or in Martel Loop that I could have in the Northeast. To me, this is not Calgary. We want to celebrate the diversity of our communities, not simply make everything look the same. And at a point where the average row house is starting at $700,000, that's not affordable. To all the people who say, but basement suites are important, we have a secondary suite program in this city. They can be anywhere now. To me, this is about respecting the diversity of our communities and doing better to listen to people.
All right, Brian Tyson, you're next.
Listen, I'm going to do the hard work of fixing zoning. I know the easiest thing in the world is, the mob is formed, grab a pitchfork, run out in front of it, and 3 of my opponents on this stage are doing just that. But what I'm telling you is this: they will end up, whether a year from now or 5 years from now, to the situation we're in today. We will need to fix it. We would lose $225 million in federal funding. It adds $50,000 to the cost of a house, the delays from zoning. So when I say fix it, this is what I'm talking about. First of all, we will cap open zoning at 4 units per lot. And for buildings that are over 4 units on a lot, we will implement a good neighbors program where we will have developers consult with neighborhoods, notify neighborhoods of that project, everyone within 100 meters, have an open house, hear the neighborhood concerns on planning, on parking, and they will provide a report that people will have posted on the city's website so you can see how the neighborhood was consulted and what was implemented.
Thanks very much. Over to you, Joe T. Gondek.
My goal is to make sure that people can age in place in the communities that they love, and I want to make sure that when people's adult children are moving back here, they can actually afford to buy a place in the communities that they grew up in. And that's something right now that's difficult in our city. So the goal of rezoning is something that happens over time as communities evolve. Let's not forget that we also have almost 100 action items in our housing strategy. And those include 17 land sales that we've already done to nonprofit affordable housing providers to make sure that people can live with dignity. It includes incentives for secondary suites to make sure that people have a place they can rent that's safe for them. It also includes the downtown revitalization strategy to make sure we are building more homes downtown. And the incentive we provide has actually allowed developers to create 20% below market units in downtown, which is near all of our amenities. So there are many things that go together hand in hand with rezoning to deliver on housing.
Okay, we're into the open debate on this topic, and I want you to feel free to respond to each other's ideas. I know right now I feel like I'm in a lot of control of this, which I sort of like, but also feel free to respond to each other. All right, we're going to start with a question for Jyoti Gondek. I mean, you voted in favor of the bylaw. You were a champion of it. What do you make of this criticism that new units being built are just not affordable?
I think one of the most important things to remember is that we had a land use hearing, which meant people came and told us what they were worried about. And what they were worried about was what was going to be built next door or across the street. And none of that happens during land use. So it's unfortunate that we give a voice to people at a stage that it doesn't help them. So we made amendments that allow people to be heard when that development permit comes forward. We directed administration to go out and engage with the community. We directed them to create a guide that shows what type of homes are acceptable in communities. And we gave a voice to the public at the time that a development permit comes forward. That's what people asked for. 700 people that spoke, their biggest concern was, I want to see what's being built and I want to be able to weigh in. And we gave them that voice. The report that comes back to us in January will tell us what they felt, and I want to make a decision at that point about whether anything different needs to be done, but I want the people to have their voice.
Jeff Davison.
I don't need a report to tell you how they felt. They were very upset by it. Just kind of an obvious there to state. But you know, I find it funny because often you want to process people in this and you know the land use of this and the certainty of this. At the end of the day, the biggest investment most of us make is in our home. And that's what we're focused on. We're not focused on city council processes. So, you know, all due respect, where was I at the public hearing? I have a day job. That's why I wasn't there. I support 24,000 patients in their cancer journey every single year in this province. That's where I was. So when talking to my city councilor, I did voice my concerns. I did try to send letters to city council. And like many of us in this city, it was all ignored. So, you know, maybe we should change the process and have better accessibility for citizens who want to give their voices, which is why I'm saying we will implement technology to make sure more people can attend public hearings. We can do it in the boardroom. I do it in healthcare. We can do it in the court systems. Why has City Council not adapted to letting more people voice their concerns where and when we need them?
Sonia Sharp.
Yeah, I think the 700 and something people that came to City Hall had a day job too, and they made some time to speak, or they wrote a letter, or they went teams. But I'm just going to ask, Jeremy a question. Jeremy, I would like to know, you know, you keep saying that Communities First flipped, and I think what it was is that our explanation maybe was too technical for you, because you took it the wrong way. But if you were so against blanket rezoning, how come you're surrounding yourself with people that came to public hearing to speak for blanket rezoning, and where were you? And no letter from you came in. Actually, there were letters from ex-councilors saying what they thought, and so I'm going to challenge you on this one, Jeremy, because you've had made such a big deal about me flipping, which I have not. I've been against blanket rezoning before blanket rezoning was even a policy. So explain to me where you were and why you surround yourself on your own team with
Okay,
those
over to
that
you,
came.
Jeremy. Thanks.
Thank you. Just want to make sure he understood. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to speak to what's being lost here. It's the uncertainty that Calgarians are feeling. I approached this maybe in a little bit different way than the others on the stage. By the time I was finished with grade 12, I had to move houses 6 or 7 times. I always had to worry about a roof over my head. I always had to worry about whether my parents would be able to make rent. And that's why my housing plan speaks to not just the experience of homeowners. I do commit to repealing blanket rezoning and moving forward with a community-informed approach, but we have to think more broadly than this. We have to think about the students out there who are struggling to make rent. We have to think about the seniors who don't know if they're going to have the option to be able to downsize in their communities. So yes, we have to restore the community voice in this process, and that's what my housing plan does. So on my website, you'll see a 100-day roadmap about restoring certainty, not just for homeowners, but also for renters, for the nonprofit sector, for city administration, ways that we can be more innovative. Right now, I think there's a lot of people, especially the 40% of Calgarians who rent, who are listening to this conversation and wondering, how are we actually going to build the needed housing? So that's how we need to move forward. We need to canvass a wide variety of voices. We can't delve too much into one extreme or the other. We need to move forward in a practical way, and that's what my plan calls for.
Mr. Farcas, while you were on council, you voted against secondary suites, which is probably one of the most affordable rental opportunities for people. You repeatedly voted against any kind of housing project that would come forward that would allow for more housing. You did not support low-income supports. You did not support transit, which is the greatest equalizer to get people around the city. You didn't support anything, and you didn't defend any of the people that you now think you're so passionate about. You didn't show up. What makes you think that we believe you now?
That's just wrong, and that's verifiably wrong. For 4 years, I was a director on the Calgary Housing Company. I advocated strongly for continued investment. When I was voting no against the arena, I was voting to divert those funds for affordable housing in the downtown, to fund our Green Line, to be able to support a downtown police station. I was a champion for the low-income transit pass. So again, you're entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts.
Okay, we're going to bring Brian Tyson into the conversation.
Yeah,
Boy, it's just a
I'll
nice
jump
history
in there.
lesson in terms of where everybody worked together in the past. Brian, you want the bylaw tweaked to include a 4-unit cap and more consultation with neighbors. What does increased consultation achieve if the process does not include a public hearing, does not include a vote by council?
I'll tell you exactly what it does. It gives the neighborhood the input that they've asked for. They were ignored in the public hearings, and people were justifiably really frustrated. So by doing it at the pre-permit stage, you have the developer consult with the neighborhood, get feedback from the neighborhood about what their concerns are with parking, and other concerns with the neighborhood, and they get to do all of that, and it's submitted in a report as part of the permit application. On the developer side, they get to see what the temperature is of the neighborhood, whether they can resolve those concerns, and none of it adds any time to the administration process, which is still streamlined by 6 months. So it's the most efficient way to actually get public input, and it actually solves a lot of these issues. And I will say this is an imminently solvable issue. Certain people on this stage have poured gasoline on the fire on the zoning issue. It is one piece of a housing report. We can solve this issue. We all agree that we have 100,000 people coming per year, and we need to build the housing for them, whether it's rental for students, seniors who want to age in place, and we all agree we need to build the housing. We can fix zoning. We can resolve this issue. It does not need to divide us, and with real leadership, people who aren't making this a political issue, I will get us there.
Jeff Davison, is the city still in a housing crisis?
Well, it's a self-inflicted one. Again, it takes too
The
long
answer's
to
yes?
develop. So the answer is yes. I mean, which is why we want to flip the script and actually put communities first. And I'll just do a straw poll. How many people are in favor of repealing blanket rezoning? Anybody against? Point made.
Okay, I've got another question for you then. You're calling for a full repeal and for the focus to be put on new communities within communities, as there's some track record for. Would that not put an additional strain on the city's budget, back to some of your values around taxation?
No, and to be honest, what we're flipping over here is that we're putting communities back in charge of their communities so that we understand how and where they want to develop first before we get into permit stage and all the confusing pieces of how council is going to move things forward. The idea is that if we go back to the rules, we can work on hyper-local area structure plans, we can involve community early, we can respect what community does. Remember, a lot of these plans have thousands of hours of community involvement, and what we're actually tired of is giving our opinion and then being totally ignored when it comes to land use. So what we want to do is make sure we hold the line in how we develop these things together, putting those community representatives first.
Jody Gondek, I want to give you a chance to respond to this idea that people were ignored. Hundreds of people lined up to talk, people sent in letters, emails, talked to their counselors, and they were ignored. How do you respond to that?
I listened to every person that came to present to us, and I can tell you that their concerns were rooted in what's going to be built next door to me or across the street. So Mr. Tyson's talking about a plan that would give people input At the permit stage, that's exactly what we directed. We have now made the ability for people to speak up about what's being proposed in their neighborhood possible. You did not have that opportunity before. If it fit within the parameters of the land use, it was going to get built. We opened a door for you to be able to contribute your voice to what you want to see in your community. And I do believe that we did not communicate that well. We had amendments that we should have explained much better. We should have spent the time leading up to rezoning, talking about what we were trying to accomplish, and we certainly should have explained to you what the amendments mean to you, that we have given you a voice.
Okay, 20 seconds to Sonia Sharp, just to explain why you looked so puzzled.
Well, that's the development authority that actually looks at those plans. Council just removes their voice too when blanket rezoning was removed from your voice, which means a development permit gets reviewed by the city planner. We get a circulation saying if we approve or not approve. We don't listen to your voice other than what you send to the planner. The development authority, who is none of us, we are never the development authority, approves those applications, which is called development permit. Your voices were removed at land use when you can come to your elected officials to speak about the single biggest investment in your community. And that needs to be brought back, and I'm committing to it.